You know, every single living thing on this planet, from the tiniest bacterium to the biggest blue whale, is made of cells. But what really makes a cell a cell? Well, it all starts with a boundary, an incredibly thin, super dynamic barrier that separates life from everything else. So today, we're going to dive into that essential structure, the plasma membrane.
Seriously, think about it. What is standing at the door of every single cell, deciding who gets in and who stays out? What's managing the whole internal environment with perfect precision? The answer is the plasma membrane. It's the unsung hero of cellular life. So let's get a closer look at this living boundary.
So what is this boundary, exactly? Well, it's not just some simple wall. Nope. It's a living, active part of the cell, and you find it in every single living thing on Earth. I mean, it is literally the edge of life itself.
Okay, so here's the more official definition. The plasma membrane is the ultimate gatekeeper. It wraps around all the cell's guts, and it even surrounds most of those tiny organs, the organelles, inside. Its number one job is to control that critical flow of materials, which, as you can imagine, is absolutely essential for the cell to even survive.
So to really get how this thing works, we first need to know what it's made of. You might think of a boundary as being made of just one thing, right? But the plasma membrane is actually this complex, pretty cool mixture of different molecules all working together.
Okay, this is where it's really interesting. Most people, when they think of membranes, they think fat or lipids. And yeah, lipids are super important. They make up about a third of the membrane. But look at this. The real heavy lifters here are the proteins. They make up the vast majority of the membrane's weight. And that tiny little sliver, those are carbohydrates. And we're going to see they play a very specific and very important role.
So we know the ingredients: proteins, lipids, and a few carbs. But how in the world do they arrange themselves to create this intelligent barrier? You know, for a long time, scientists were pretty puzzled by this, until they came up with what's called the fluid mosaic model. And that name, it perfectly captures the dynamic and complex nature of the membrane structure.
The key to the whole structure really comes down to the main lipid molecules, which are called phospholipids. And they have this fascinating kind of split personality. See, they've got a hydrophilic head, which loves water, and two hydrophobic tails, which, you guessed it, are terrified of water. So in the watery world, inside and outside a cell, they instinctively arrange themselves to shield their tails from all that water. And this right here brings us to the central idea of the fluid mosaic model. Those phospholipid molecules, they form a double layer, a bilayer, that acts like a C. And all those proteins we were just talking about, they're scattered all through it, just floating within this lipid sea, just as the model so perfectly puts it, like large icebergs. And right here you can see the whole model in action. You've got that phospholipid bilayer forming the sea, then you have the proteins embedded in it like those icebergs. Now the key is that it's fluid. These proteins can literally drift around sideways. It's also asymmetrical, which just means the inside and outside faces are different. Wedged in between the lipids are cholesterol molecules, which act like a temperature buffer, keeping the membrane from getting too runny when it's warm or too stiff when it's cold. And get this, all of this is happening in a structure that's just 7 nanometers thick. It's unbelievably thin. Okay, so let's zoom in on those protein icebergs for a minute. If the lipids are providing the basic structure, the C, then the proteins, well, they're providing most of the function. And it is an incredible amount of function. They are the active machinery, the little workers that get everything done. I mean, these proteins are the ultimate multitaskers. Some of them are channels or carriers, basically forming little tunnels to help specific things get across. Others are enzymes, carrying out chemical reactions right there on the surface of the membrane. Lots of them act as receptors. Think of them like a doorbell that receives signals, like hormones, from other cells. And some are antigens, which act like team jerseys, helping cells recognize each other. And speaking of recognition, that's where those little carbs we mentioned earlier come into play. When they're attached to proteins or lipids, they form things called glycoproteins and glycolipids. You should think of these as the cell's unique ID tags, or its surface markers. This is how your immune system knows which cells are you and which are foreign invaders. They're also totally critical for making sure the right cells stick together to form tissues, like your skin or your liver. Okay, let's take a step back. We've seen the parts, the fluid lipid sea, the functional protein icebergs, and those carbohydrate ID tags. Now let's put it all together and really understand why this specific fluid mosaic structure is just so genius. So here's the beautiful part. This structure isn't an accident. it's perfectly suited for its jobs. Because it's fluid, it can be flexible and even repair itself. The proteins embedded in it give it precise control over what comes in and out, allowing it to maintain the exact internal pH and ion levels needed for life. The surface markers allow for all that complex cell recognition. Basically, this structure allows the cell to be its own little world that can still intelligently interact with everything around it.
Which kind of leaves us with this one big thought. This elegant, self-assembling, and incredibly complex barrier, just 7 nanometers thick, is the foundation for all life as we know it. It's just a beautiful example of how, at the tiniest microscopic level, simple chemical properties can come together to create the extraordinary complexity and order that defines what it even means to be alive.